Hi, I'm Ben,
And I'm Josh.
and this is the Bad at Magic podcast, a podcast about games, life, and other things. And welcome to episode 58.
Ben, do you get severe inclement weather down in Louisiana where you live now?
We're kind of in the hurricane zone and a little bit near the tornado zone. So, yeah, I would say so.
So you pay attention to like the National Weather Service and the advisories that they put out?
It's so funny you would ask this, Josh, because I spent today talking to an actual meteorologist this morning.
You lead such an interesting life. How did you find yourself talking to a meteorologist?
Okay, so there's a guy at work who's been in the Air Force about as long as me, and I'm like, so what does your wife do? He's like, well, we met at school while she was studying to be a meteorologist. I'm like, really? My daughter's interested in that. Would you mind if we got together for lunch and we could talk to your wife about what she does, and my daughter could maybe get some ideas about what to study in high school and do in college? And he's like, sure. So we got together for lunch today and talked meteorology, and she talked about the National Weather Service. But what does that have to do with the number 58?
So the number 58 is very important to the National Weather Service. So there's two different things that the number 58 comes into. Actually, it breaks down into four different things, but they're two different types of warnings. So for both of these things, I'm going to say there's both a watch and a warning version. A watch means that the conditions are possible, while a warning is the conditions are expected.
Okay, I've never understood the definition between that, and you just said it, and I forgot again already.
Weather is one of those things that falls right out of my head too. Like I have learned the names of all the different types of clouds no less than 5 times in my life, and I cannot for the life of me remember any of them.
Yeah.
Ever.
And I'll get the pop of my computer that says tornado warning or tornado watch. I'll be like, which one is the really bad one? I don't know.
So the warning is the bad one.
Okay. Warning, we've seen one.
Yes, or expected. So,
as opposed to watch, where the conditions exist where one could be there.
Yes. So high wind watch or warning means that there are sustained winds of 40 miles per hour for more than an hour, or there's gusting winds of 58 miles per hour or at any point. A severe thunderstorm warning or watch is the same thing. It has to be winds of 58 miles or higher and or hail of 1 inch or larger.
I wonder why the number 58.
I am so glad that you asked, Ben. Why 58? Well, in the 1950s and the 1960s, there was only 3 types of weather watches that were really issued out to the world. It was a tornado watch, a public severe thunderstorm watch, which is one that would go out to the common man, and then aviation severe thunderstorm watch, which was specifically for airports and air traffic control. So the public severe thunderstorm was originally 75 miles per hour wind, and the aviation one was 50 miles per hour wind. And then the Air Force came around and negotiated hey, why do we have 2 different kinds of severe thunderstorm watches and warnings? That's dumb. And they standardized the 2 to the same to 58 miles per hour, which is 50 knots.
Oh.
Yes.
Okay, so it was the compromise so that they could only have one kind of warning.
It was like the Air Force saying, well, this is what we're going to do, and you all are going to comply.
It's not like the speed at which a European swallow carrying a coconut can no longer achieve lift or something like that.
No, I will tell you this. This is probably the most research I've done on a data numbers for our little segments here, because I asked the same question, why 58? And boy, did I have to dig deep into the internet rabbit hole to find that one.
Okay, 58 miles per hour is 50 knots, which is the aviation version.
Yeah, and when in 1970, they combined the two, the aviation and the public severe thunderstorm watches, into one, and they kept the 50 knots, which is 58 miles per hour.
Great. Well, the Bad at Magic podcast is nothing if not educational.
So here's the thing. How we tie this 58 into our into the podcast today is 58 is considered, quote, extreme, which means there is an extreme threat to life and property from high wind. So, listeners, Episode 58 is an extreme threat to life and property.
Okay, I guess you'll have to wait to find out why. So I got a couple of things from follow-up. We had some good feedback from the listeners after episode 57. So if you're new to the podcast, go back and listen to 57. Josh and I got into a little bit of debate that will probably continue everlastingly. But other than one little thing, I think we can just save that for later. I don't think we need to open up any cans of worms here, but there was one thing a listener pointed out that I really enjoyed. You had told the story of how you had gotten for your birthday, I think, the gift of a 6-pack of assorted beers, all of the variety IPA as an India Pale Ale.
Yes.
And you were pointing out the fact that the only thing they knew about you is that you'd said something about India Pale Ale, and they'd missed the fact that you'd said that you hate it.
I went on a whole rant about how much I hated IPA beers.
Yeah, and then later on when you weren't there, like, so what should we get Jeff? I don't know. I remember him saying something about India Pale Ale. So one of our astute listeners pointed out that was the same dilemma that Tony Stark had with Pepper Potts in the original Iron Man when he brought her a gift of strawberries.
Oh, yeah, there's only 2 things I'm allergic to. One of them is strawberries.
He's like, all I remember is that you said something about strawberries.
You know, that's exactly the reason he made Jarvis. I don't know why he didn't ask Jarvis what he was supposed to get Pepper Potts.
Yeah. What should I get Pepper Potts? That'd be nice if I had an artificial intelligence figuring that kind of thing out for me. Okay, so this week, Josh, I had a weird opportunity pop up on social media. I had an old friend from Colorado Springs from like 12 years ago say, hey, the movie Dune is about to come out. And I haven't gone to the movies in over a year and a half because of COVID. I love the movies. What I want to do is rent out a theater, invite all my friends to come, and we can enjoy going back to the movies together. Who's interested? And I kind of go ahead.
In Colorado.
In Colorado, and I'm in Louisiana.
Yeah, you live in Louisiana. That's the thing I wanted to point out right there.
So I kind of went on the thread that he'd done this on Facebook, and I was like, I'd be interested in that if there was one other thing going on. You know, one other reason I had to be there that weekend. And then I got an instant message from him, and he said, you know, it's funny you should ask because I'm holding a Magic tournament at my house on Saturday, just in case you needed one other thing. And I was like, So I got off and I looked up airfares and I talked to my wife and just everything fell into place. I had a little bit of extra leave. There was nothing going on at work. There was nothing going on with the family at home really to speak of. And, well, I'm going to get in trouble for saying that. But there were, oh boy.
You have 6 children. There's always something going on.
Okay, so there was something going on, but I could miss it. And I was like, okay. So I went back and I told this guy, and we're acquaintances, but I wouldn't say we're close friends. But I appreciate our relationship, and I like that we're friends. Maybe I'll tell the story about how we met some other time. Anyway, I bought the plane tickets, and I flew to Colorado, and I got there on Thursday just in time to check into my hotel and then go down to the theater and watch Dune. Have you seen Dune yet?
I have seen Dune.
All right. Do spoiler alert to our audience. I don't intend to recap the plot. I just want to say it was great.
Can we spoil a book that was written in what, the 50s?
Kinda. I mean, everything that we've discussed on this program is based on a comic book or a book or an idea of the past or the monomyth.
Dune, I find, is a very tricky book to turn into a movie because
Yes.
it's so nuanced. A lot of the conflict that happens in Dune is very internal, and it's just kind of weird. And so all the interpretations I see are either way too esoteric or like way too dumbed down. Now, this one I think is a little more on the esoteric side in that, like, if you didn't read the book, there's a lot of stuff that's going on that you're probably going to miss. But I forgave it because the visuals were amazing.
Yeah, it was astounding. And it was immersive in a way that the 80s and other film adaptations of it weren't. There was just kind of cringy and hokey and not really immersive. It just looked like actors on a soundstage. Where this, it really felt like you were on an alien planet.
Man, I'll tell you, they did like an overhead shot of the city on the planet Arrakis that they were coming into. And just the visual style that they went with for this like deep desert, like wind-blown city was like just... I'm sitting in my living room by myself, and I said out loud, I was like, wow, like I want to live there.
Yeah, it really looked like an outpost on an alien desert planet. And all of the interior shots were like that, and it was fantastic. So I had this great experience in the theater with 40 people or so, about a half a dozen I'd previously been acquainted with, no close friends really, but enjoyed the movie going experience. Appreciate my friend for inviting me, and then I went and checked into the hotel, and then I had a couple days to myself. So I got in the car and I drove down to Colorado Springs from Denver, which is about an hour and a half drive. And it was the peak of like the fall foliage season, and it was gorgeous, Josh. I really miss being in Colorado. Anyway, I drove past the Academy, which we've talked about a lot on this podcast, and they'd gotten into like the further stages of the $15 million renovation or whatever they're doing, and the entire Academy Chapel is in a box. So it's funny to drive past the Academy when you're going down the front range and there's a box where the 17 pointy spires used to be. It's just like a white rectangle. It almost looks like that part of the image hasn't finished loading yet.
That's really funny. Did you flip it off for me as you were driving by?
I thought of you, definitely.
This is an old alumni tradition, people. If you drive by the Academy, flip it off and think of me. I'll appreciate you.
So I played a few beautiful games of disc golf where it was like just the right temperature and the fall colors, and enjoyed the outdoors. Got to see some good friends that I hadn't seen in a while that I love, and played some great games. Played some Magic. I may talk about that, but also I won F&M and I did really good in the tournament that we held at the friend's house. But I also played another game I'll talk about later when we talk about Board Game Survivor. It was interesting from the COVID perspective to fly from a relative high transmission area, although trending downward, everywhere is trending downward, to a very low area where, like, when I got on the plane, everybody around me was wearing masks, and when I got to Colorado, it was almost like everybody had forgotten about it already.
Huh. Yeah, how was, was there different security protocols? Did you have to go through extra checks, or was there checks that you were expecting that you didn't have to go through?
So I'm remembering back to previous air travel, a few months ago, where they were like taking your temperature. There was nothing like that going on anywhere. Like, that's not happening. It was just mandatory mask on the flight and in the airport.
How many fights were on the plane? Because I'm hearing now that there's at least 3 fist fights on any flight over an hour.
Nothing like that at all whatsoever.
Oh, well, that's good and kind of disappointing.
Yeah. And then I rented a hybrid economy car, a Hyundai Ioniq, which was interesting. I hadn't used one. I drove like 200 miles. I didn't even have to gas that sucker up. I turned it back in, and the fuel gauge was like at the same place as when I left.
That was a plug-in hybrid?
No, it's just a small car with the electric motor that runs on a small gas motor. It was good.
Cool.
I liked it. And that was my Academy trip. My trip to Colorado for watching Dune and playing Magic.
And that's all I have to say about that.
Yeah. Now, I was bad at parenting this week, Josh.
Well, I mean, statistically speaking, with 6 children, you're going to mess up more often than I am going to. But at the same time, you're also going to have much better parenting moments more often than I do.
Yeah, and I've been so critical of you when you chewed out your daughter for asking you, why don't you do the dishes?
Oh.
And I had a very similar experience and had a very similar reaction.
Give me all of the delicious details.
Okay, so I got home from work and I came in the house, and it was just like that thing where, like, you step in the door and you trip over something, and every additional step you take, you're tripping over something else. And everything was kind of ratcheting up the annoyance meter one by one, and I don't realize it until it's too late.
Something like you get to the last one, or somebody says something, and it catalyzes all of this, like, below the threshold aggravation that has been building.
Yes. So my 13-year-old daughter, Russia, she is all my kids are good kids, but if you were to say which of the kids is consistently overall the most well-behaved, she'd be the one that got that vote. But she happened to be the one in the way when I got to the top.
Oh dear.
So I come in, and there's just everybody got home. They didn't clean up their breakfast. They got home from school and they all had their after-school snack, and nobody cleaned that up and stuff. And of course, if I ask, there will be the standard response. I don't know if your kids have the standard response yet. It's, who didn't clean up their breakfast? What's the answer?
Oh, well, I only have 2 kids. So if I ask the boy, he will say the girl. And if I ask the girl, he will say the boy.
Okay, well, our version of that, I guess the more kids version of that is not me.
Everyone else, of course, I didn't do this.
Not me. That's not mine. So my daughter comes, she's got on her noise-canceling headphones and her iPod, and she's walking past me, and I'm like, hey, you didn't clean up your crap. And she goes, that's not mine. And she kind of shoulders past me and goes out. And I'm like, I'm
Yeah.
standing there, and it's like the cartoon. My ears are turning red, and the top of my head's starting to boil. And I look behind me, watch her go out the door. I'm like, no, that's not happening. So I go outside. I'm like, take off the headphones, pause the iPod, come in the house with me right now. And it's too late. It's too late. So I come in and I point to the very first thing. I'm like, is this yours? And she goes, no. And I said, how about this? And I point to the next thing. No. How about this? No, none of it's mine. I told you, Dad, none of this is mine. I'm like, no. You're going to answer this question for every single thing I ask. I'm still pointing at the third thing.
What, little girl, one of these things in here is yours. And when I find it, your butt is grass and I'm the lawnmower.
That was the theory. I knew eventually something in that room was going to belong to hers, and then not me would cease to exist for everyone. All I need, you can't prove a negative. So I just needed to prove that something in this room belonged to her, and therefore not me didn't apply. And she lied to me. So I go to the fourth thing. How about this? No. I'm like, and she starts to try to get away. I'm like, listen, you're going to answer this for every single one of these things. And there's a lot of tension in my voice. How about this? How about this? How about this? No, no, no. My wife comes into the room and she's like, all right, I've heard enough. I'm like, oh, man.
Overruled. Your hypothesis is incorrect.
Yes. And I was going to have this moment, and I look at her and I'm not ready to give up yet. I'm like, wife, you got to let me be the dad here. She's like, no, you're taking it too far. And I'm like, crap, because I know how I got to use the right word here, how insistent she can be when she's correcting me. And I've learned that it's best to listen. So she turns to my daughter and she says, I want you to go away right now. And she didn't need to be told twice.
Yeah, and then she vanished.
Yeah, so she vanished. And my wife's looking at me, and I'm not ready for the, you're naughty lecture. So I just went away too. So I went and sat. I went into the back of my closet behind the clothes and closed the clothes in front of my face. And I'm sitting on the floor of my closet, feeling terrible for being mean to my 13-year-old daughter who really hadn't made any of that mess.
Well, hang on. Let's not go down this pity train of I did this terrible bad thing by trying to be a parent that expects the house to be clean. And just because you lost the dice roll, you had a 1 in 6 opportunity to snag her on something. You lost that roll. That doesn't mean you were wrong. There was still the trail of stuff that you had to deal with. Just because you didn't catch her on it doesn't mean you couldn't have caught any of the other children.
Okay, so here's the capital I bought by giving in to my wife. While I'm hiding in the closet, she went and got all the kids and made them clean up.
Which is probably what you should have done in the first place.
I know. And while they were cleaning up, she did find some things that my daughter had left that were hers that I just hadn't gotten to yet, that I would have gotten to eventually if she hadn't stopped me.
Now, tell me, Alicia got down on her eye level and whispered to her, do you understand what would have happened if your father had pointed
if I hadn't rescued you?
Yeah. So I know exactly what you're saying with the kid. You're asking a question and the kid shoulders past you. There is, every once in a while, our kids will do something to that effect. And it's one of those just little minor things where it's hey, come clean up your stuff. And the kid will be like, I'm washing my hands first. And it's it's such a minor little thing. But at the same time, I'm over here and in the back of my mind, no, you don't get to set terms for this kind of stuff. Right. I'm the one that's in charge. I can't give up the sequencing or the timing of you doing the things I tell you, because that's a slippery slope that I'm just going to, next thing I know, you're just not doing anything anymore.
You nailed it. That's exactly what happened. It was just, it was all of the stresses of the mess after a long day at work. And then the kid being like, you don't get to decide what I'm doing right now. We're like, the heck I don't.
It was a lot more in that moment. Like we said, the threshold, all of the frustration was building up to your threshold of taking action. And then that little tiny inconsiderate thing that your daughter did, that little taking that stance of you're not the boss of me or whatever, just threw you over the top. And now that's the thing that you fixate on. Okay, this is what I'm overall mad about, but I'm reinforcing the idea that no, I'm in charge of your whole freaking life.
Yeah, yeah. I think if I'd been able to do the exercise I was doing with just a little bit less anger and intensity, my wife might have let me carry it through.
Yes, but it's hard to separate that frustration in the moment.
Yeah. Like, we would have gotten to something that belonged to her, and then we'd have had a little lesson, be like, see, sweetheart, when you tell me it's not you, you know? And I want there to...
If she had said that, like, Dad, I told you, no, this is mine. We're going through all of these, and gotten to one that was hers, like me being the bad parent that I am, I'd have been in her face like, aha! You did lie to me.
Yeah. And... but overall, I want there to be an attitude, not just of her taking responsibility for her thing, but her taking responsibility for the generalness of it. She was in the kitchen when her siblings were making the mess. You're like, hey, are you going to pick that up? Like, I want them to do that to each other. I want them to feel like, even if they have to take my name in vain, hey, Dad's going to get home from work in an hour. You better pick that up.
That's all right. I'm not a religious guy, but even that like triggered my threshold of, whoa, that's the lower role here. Like, there's the only time I've ever heard that used is like the Lord's name in vain. Then you might be the king of your castle, but I don't know if you're the.
Okay, that's what it means to take the Lord's name in vain, right?
Yeah, that's what I said. I'm referencing.
No. I don't think you understand, because sometimes people think taking the Lord's name in vain means just saying God's name in a flippant way, but it actually means saying His name to try to enforce His authority on people when you don't have a right to do that.
Oh, well.
But I'm saying I want them to take my name in vain because I want them to have a blanket authority on their siblings to say, you better clean that up or Dad's not going to like it.
Yeah, no, that's an effective use of your name in vain. I agree with you there. I have to get this footnote in. In my house, the operating rule is not to say the Lord's name in vain is the flippant thing that you mentioned earlier.
Right.
And that's the rule that I live by, or else I get in trouble.
So let me give you the opposite of that. That would be like if let's say you were sitting there and you heard your kids talking to each other in the room and be like, hey, Dad says you have to give me all the chocolate out of your Halloween candy that you got trick-or-treating.
I would go in there.
That's taking your name in vain.
I would go in there and I would say, I said no such thing. I said she had to give me 30% of her candy, not you all of it.
Dad tax time. Yeah. So there was the additional problem, and that was I knew I'd wounded my poor daughter's soul, who's a lovely,
wounded
kind
this 12-year-old daughter's soul
child.
By pointing out to her that there was a mess that she did contribute to.
But I was mean and cruel to her. Now, if there's anything I feel like I've learned in my life, it's how to say sorry when you're wrong without making it qualified or saying it was because of the circumstances or someone else's fault. Not to mention, she was about to leave for her Wednesday night youth activity, and then I was going to fly out to Colorado the following morning and be gone for 4 days. So I didn't want, if I ended up a smoking crater or at least just be out of town for 4 days, I didn't want to miss my opportunity.
Listen, you kids, I'm going to be gone for 4 days, and if this place isn't spick and span when I get back.
So I went up to her room, and I looked her in the eye, and I'm like, sweetheart, I'm sorry about the way I acted down there. That's not the way you treat someone you love, and you are someone I love, and I'm sorry for treating you that way. Oh. And then I held out my arms for a hug, and she gave me a hug. And I gave her a hug back, and I tried to let go, and she didn't let go. So I hugged her back until she was done hugging, and then I let go, and then I felt a lot better.
And then she admitted to having contributed to the mess and that she was lying to you the whole time? Oh, she got away with it clean.
That wasn't... If I was apologizing with the expectation that would be the result, it wouldn't have been a sincere apology. I wasn't expecting anything in return.
It was just catharsis for you to express your
remorse
regret.
For having lost control of myself. That was my bad at parenting moment, Josh.
I don't think that was bad at parenting, Ben. I think you did an excellent thing. Like, it might have taken your wife's help there in the middle to recognize the emotional state that you were in. But that's what our better halves are for. That's why they're called our better halves.
It is. I'm grateful. And I'm also grateful for my wife for not following me to my room when I needed a cool off period.
Yeah, the hiding in your closet, that sounds a lot like you knew you screwed up and you didn't want Alicia to find you right away.
Yes, that's exactly what it was. It's hard. It's hard to eat humble pie so fast. after the incident. When you've been chastened right in front of the child that you were trying to assert authority over.
I like this metaphor. You were chowing down on the anger and frustration. It's hard to eat that slice of humble pie right after it. You gotta let it settle for a bit.
You gotta go take the Thanksgiving nap before you get to the pie. All right, it is time for Bad at Logic.
Well, we are doing a fallacy this week, and you are the one that is full of fallacy. So which one is it this week?
Let's do the gambler's fallacy.
I like the gambler's fallacy.
Yes. So the gambler's fallacy is believing that runs occur to statistically independent phenomena such as roulette wheel spins or die rolls or coin flips.
So, Ben, as a good practicing LDS member of that church, do you participate in a lot of gambling, a lot of random chance games for money?
Negative.
Okay.
But I am aware of the use, and the use of random chance is not completely anathema to religion.
I was going to go down a rabbit hole, but I'm more intrigued by this one. Go ahead.
Okay, so there are at least half a dozen instances in the Bible where binding decisions with the authority of God behind them are made by games of random chance.
But if by definition God is omnipotent and knows all things forward and backwards and is in control of all things, how can it possibly be random chance?
I don't know, but if you look up in the Bible the word casting lots and learn about the history of that practice, it's like rolling dice or flipping a coin to make a decision.
All right, well, I'm going to bring this back.
God can influence this thing.
I'm getting away from the Bible, and I'm going to talk about actual gambling because I am not a practicing member of the LDS Church, and I have gambled in casinos before, and I enjoy it quite a bit. My parents, also huge fans of gambling. They go to casinos here in Arizona regularly. And they're the ones that I'm constantly having to remind of the gambler's fallacy.
The gambler's fallacy. Okay, what is the idea of a run, Josh?
So the idea of a run is, my parents will say this all the time. Oh, you can't walk away now, you're on a heater. And you never walk away from a heater.
Which is vocabulary used to justify the gambler's fallacy.
Yes, it's the idea that you've won a handful in a row, or you're winning more than you're losing over a set period of observable time, and therefore that trend is going to continue until it stops. But until it stops, you got to stay there and ride it out. That's the idea.
That's one form. Really, the basic idea is that an individual statistically random event can potentially be influenced by the history of similar events.
Right. Yeah. Okay. I see. You're talking about specifically, like whatever you rolled on the craps table last time has absolutely no bearing on what you're going to roll this time.
Right. It doesn't. If you flip a coin 5 times and it comes up heads and it's a 50-50 coin, there isn't some other criteria present. It doesn't. The chances of flipping heads again the next time is still 50-50. You're not like due to get a tails.
So this is interesting. When I turned 21, the first time I went to Vegas with my parents after that, I had done the math on a spreadsheet, Ben, to figure out what was the optimal way for me to increase the amount of money that I had with me on my person at the casino while I was there. And I landed on roulette.
Yeah,
so roulette,
which is close to 50-50 odds.
It's got the green spot, the 0 spot, and then some casinos do 2 green spots with the 0 and the double 0, and that's how the casino makes their money.
So it's like 48% odds.
Now, listen, there are a million ways to bet on a roulette table. My parents love doing all of the crazy ones. I was there doing what is called
the 50-50 odds.
The standard doubling technique, and that is you sit down, I'm sitting in front of the black or the red bet, and I put $5 on it. That's table minimum. If I win, I pull the $5 back. If I lose, I put $10 on that spot. And if I lose that, I put $20 on that spot. And if I lose, I put $40 on that spot until I win, and then I pull everything back and start back over at 5. So the idea here is that, yes, while each individual spin of the wheel is independent, the odds of it going either black or red for so many spins in a row becomes increasingly unlikely, which is the problem.
So you avoid the gambler's fallacy by just having a rule to not change.
No, I didn't avoid the fallacy. I fell victim to it because of this.
Oh.
I did the spreadsheet ahead of time, like, oh, this is great. The odds of me hitting the table max, this is where you start to run into a problem, because If you keep doubling every time, and then when you eventually win and go back to your 5, you've recouped all of your losses up to that point.
Yes.
And so you can just keep doing it forever, theoretically, unless you're having to double up until you hit the table maximum bet, and you can't double anymore. Now you've just lost all that money. So that for that casino is either 6 or 7 times in a row, and I had it on a spreadsheet. It's like, oh, the chances of it landing on either one color or the zeros 7 times in a row are like 1 in 50,000 or something. Don't quote me on this, listeners.
Okay. So by doubling, you don't have to lose when you lose.
Yes, as long as you keep every time you lose, you double, and you keep doing that until you win, and then you reset back to 0. You're recouping everything that you lost previous to that.
Got it.
So, but here's the problem. In advance, looking at my spreadsheet, I'm like, oh, well, there's no way that this can't work because the odds of it going 7 times in a row are infinitesimally small. But then sitting at the table, Ben, this is when it dawned on me, this fallacy. I'm at the table, and all of a sudden I'm in the middle of one of these 6 runs, and I hit the table max. I am pushing $250 that I have accrued up to this point onto one bet.
This thing has gone red 6 times in a row. I got to switch to black.
I'm 21. This is the first time I'm gambling for keeps, and $250 is like, that's a lot of money for a 21-year-old guy. At least it was for me at the time, and I'm sweating bullets. Like, holy crap! Like, yes, it's gone 6 times in a row, and the odds say it shouldn't happen. But now I'm down to 48% odds that I win and 52% odds that I don't.
Yeah. So what happened?
Oh no, I eventually lost, and I didn't want to gamble anymore because I didn't have any more money.
And what have we learned, Josh?
Well, I went there with $200. At one point, I had $800, and then I left there with $300. So I'm calling it a win.
Okay. I'd be interested to see your lifetime ledger. So, what would you say are some other areas in which you see the gambler's fallacy in application?
Oh man, I don't know. I think people generate like rules for their life based on the gambler's fallacy.
Yes, they totally do, and it's they use the same kind of vocabulary, like you talked about, going on a run or being on a heater or those kinds of things. Like in baseball, if a pitcher's having a perfect game and no one wants to talk to him, or if a basketball player's made a lot of shots in a row, they say he's on fire. He'll still regress to the mean. He has an average. But some ones where it actually influences, they've done studies to find this out. Parole boards, baseball umpires, loan officers, and video game players, specifically with a recent development, which is something called loot boxes. Basically, in all 5 of those things, there'll be something where like the umpire's like, okay, he can't get this so many times in a row, so I'm going to call the next one a foul a ball instead of a strike or whatever. And or a loan officer being like, well, I've denied the last 3 customers, so maybe the next one will be the one I give it to. Instead of doing it independently and just expecting the odds, they think that they're on a heater or something like that. And so they've done studies to determine that people have this thinking they get into, that there can't be a statistical run, and then they override the logic and make a bad decision.
I can see that happening. I don't think I fall victim to that because I'm an accountant, so that makes me a robot. But I can see people making that mistake.
It's good to be aware of the gambler's fallacy, and that is being bad at logic. For Bad at English today, let's talk about a term that the British use to describe the British use to describe an informal conversation. They call it a chin-wag.
I've heard this before. That's a common, like, you've heard this all the time, like chin-wagging. Like, guys just talking.
I was having a chin-wag. It is talking, but it's the kind of talk that's more likely to involve gossip.
I see. So they use it as a noun, whereas we use it more as a verb.
You could use it as both. Mm-hmm. It has both a noun and a verb form, but you would definitely never use it to talk about some formal discussion. Like I went for a chin wag at a job interview. No, you wouldn't say that, even if you were talking.
Job interviews are chin wags. They have very little bearing on if you get the job or not. They're not asking you, whatever, it's fine.
Yeah, but it's definitely informal in use. I couldn't find anything about the etymology of it, but it follows that British pattern of using something kind of a colorful turn of phrase to denote something that calls an image to mind. Like, oh, mom was out the back fence again having a chin-wag with the neighbor. I wonder what they were talking about.
I think it makes perfect sense. There's no etymology needed here because if somebody's talking, this happens all the time, and I call it when people talk at me instead of to me because I'm not listening. Like
Yeah.
you just tune them out, and their words just become sounds that don't penetrate your brain. Yeah, they turn into those trombone noises from Charlie Brown, and you're just watching, and you're just watching the chin go up and down, and wait for it to stop, so you can say something like, "That's interesting." I've never thought of it that way.
Yeah. Having a chin wag. All right, well, that's what we do each week here on the Bad and Magic podcast. In Board Game Survivor this week, I played 3 games. One I'm going to throw in here just as a highlight that I played while I was in Colorado that doesn't have anything to do with our family culling our board game collection. There's 2 that we did play for that purpose this week. The one I played in Colorado, they called The Game. I couldn't find the box of it. I can't find it online, and it's weird, but it's like Team Racco. Do you remember the game Racco?
No, not at all.
Okay, the game Racco is you have a rack with 10 slots in it, and they give you number cards, and you put them in a random order, and then you have to get them in ascending order. They're numbers like 0 to 100. Okay. And you can only do it by swapping them out one at a time. And it's random what's going to be in the middle that you can swap it out with. So you kind of have to balance the randomness of the card you're getting with where you position on the rack, and you don't want to corner yourself so that you have like a run that's too tight, or you end up with too high or too low cards in the middle, and then you can't put them in ascending order.
I don't. You just like the description of this game drove straight into a part of my brain that is fascinated because what you're talking about is the viability and the efficiency of different sorting algorithms, which I took whole classes about at the Academy for Computer Science.
It's just like that. You would love Racco. So, but Racco's played individually. You can play 2 to 4 players where you each have your own rack and you're all competing for the same cards and you take turns. You can either swap one of your cards for the one in the middle or switch 2 of your cards on your rack. And as long as you follow the most efficient sorting algorithm and you get a little bit lucky, you'll probably beat everyone else. Well, this was not that. This is called The Game, and here's how it works. They have, I think it was 2 or 3 or 4 sets of 100 cards all mixed together, and all that's on them is a number 0 to 99, 1 to 99. And then you have 4 piles on the table. 2 of them are ascending piles, and 2 of them are descending piles. The ascending piles start at 0, the descending piles start at 100. And then with the 7 cards in your hand, you have to place at least 2 of them on 2 of those piles and then draw 2 new cards. And you got to work together as a team to try to discard all of the cards into those 4 piles, but you can't tell the other players what numbers you have.
Okay.
So you got to do the best you can with what you have, and you kind of got to communicate with them vaguely, but you can't say, I have the next number from that. There's one other thing about it, and that is you can reset a pile by 10 previous if you match like Uno, when you match a number but not the color, and you can play it. So if you're on the ascending pile and you had 33 out, you could play the 23 card.
That right there. When you just said that, you lost me. Like, I'm following the rules. I'm like, okay, I can kind of see the strategy. And then there's this thing about 10s, like, nope, boop, I'm out, forget it. Can't follow.
Okay. So the thing that this game did that made it really great, which makes me want to find it, buy it, and play it next time I'm at a party, is how you could grab some random person walking by, you could sit them down, and they could start playing with about 10 seconds worth of explanation.
Would you do that? Would you ambush somebody into a game that way?
Absolutely. Any place I go, like at my house when all my siblings and stuff around, not a soul that couldn't be grabbed like that, except maybe my mom. But anybody else, he's like, hey, sit down, play this game. What's going on? All right, here's 7 cards. You can't tell us what the numbers are. You got to play 2. These are the ascending piles. These are the descending piles. We got to do all the cards. That's it.
I feel like that way with Dominion. Like, you've played Dominion, of course, where it's the stack of 10, you have a start. It's the deck building game where you cycle your hand. It's like, all right, what?
Yeah.
I feel like I can grab somebody walking by, sit down, play this game. Here are your starting cards. What do I do? You have 1 action and 1 buy in that order on your turn. That's it. We'll let you go last. You'll have it by the halfway through the first game. Ready, go.
Kinda. there's still a lot of reading you got to do and understanding of the interactions. But yeah, it's relatively simple. You can just pick it up. So the thing about this game that made it intriguing for me, I want to try it again, is because the communication that's happening in the team. Because you can kind of communicate by degrees. Hang on, don't play on that pile. I have a good play on that pile. How good? Well, pretty good. Like you can't.
You see, my victory conditions are now dependent on other people, and I've got to communicate vaguely with them. This has all of the things that I don't want in a game.
It's players. It takes Bracco is like a player versus player game, but this game, the game is players versus game. You're all trying together. It's like group solitaire.
Whenever I play the players versus the game type of game, all I can do is sit there and go, I could do all of this so much more efficiently by myself.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. If it was just solitaire, you could probably sit there and figure it all out, how to play them optimally and stuff like that. But it's the chaos and decision-making of other people that makes it interesting.
See, those are the games that turn me off the hardest. Do you mind if I talk about another game for a second?
Yeah, sure.
All right, so there was a game that we played in one of those Texas game retreats, and it was an intriguing idea. I am 100% behind the idea of this game, but I will never play it again. And I don't remember what it was called. But the idea is you had 2 teams of 4, and you're sitting all at a table together, and you're a submarine crew.
Oh, I played it with you.
Yeah, I forget what the name of the game is.
Yeah, you keep talking about it. I'll figure out what it's called.
So each person on the 4-person crew has a specific job that they have to do, and it's all happening in real time. Like everybody's shouting at each other to do stuff. And the idea is that you know where you are, and there's certain actions you have to take to move or fire your torpedoes or look around or whatever. And you don't know where the other team is, and you're trying to find the other team. And like listening to them shout at each other is a perfectly viable strategy for trying to find them. But there's all these things happening all at the same time. And my social anxiety was so insanely high during that entire game that like they said, it's like, oh, that was really fun. Let's play again. And I literally threw up my hands, stood up from the table like, nope, I have no desire to do this again. Thanks, guys. It was super fun, but I will never play this game with you ever again.
So the game was Captain Sonar.
Captain Sonar.
And there are 4 unique roles on each team. There's the captain, the first officer, the weapons officer, and the engineer. And you all have unique roles that you have to play in executing and moving this sub around and fighting a good battle.
Do a link to the YouTube video with the instructions in the show notes, because there's like a 10-minute video that explains how the game works. And if you're interested, look at it. It's really interesting. And again, I am totally behind the concept of this as a party game, but that is exactly the kind of game that makes me hate everyone around me and not want to participate or talk to another human being for a week.
So I bought that game after I got back. So I obviously had a very different experience than you playing it.
Well, the more we talk about this board game Survivor, the more I'm realizing is you really love the social interaction and the chaos games. Like you want all the shouting and the crazy stuff going on.
Yeah, I think you're right. So let me talk about that, because there were 2 games this week, and Josh, we had our first casualty.
Yes. Did you burn it? Did you burn it in a sacrificial fire?
I still have it. I haven't decided yet what to do, but there's no rush.
You have to have. All right, well, there's no rush. You're right, but I think
it's on death row.
You need to have some kind of ceremony, and we need to film it for our YouTube channel, and you need to destroy it in some amazing way.
Okay, so one of the games that I was introduced a few years ago that falls into this category I like is called Apples to Apples. Have you ever played Apples to Apples?
I have, but it's been a very long time.
Okay, it's a wonderful game. You have 2 categories of cards. There are noun cards and there are adjective cards. It's very simple. Everyone gets a pile of noun cards, and then you turn over an adjective card. And whatever players turned over the adjective, it could be something like wonderful. And then everyone looks at their 7 noun cards that they have, and then they're supposed to secretly put out a card that represents something they think that person will find to be wonderful. And so there's the randomness of what 7 cards do they have in their hand, but then there's also understanding that person. Could it be something funny? Could it be something accurate? Could it be an antonym? Whatever, you pick something you think that person will pick. You put it in secretly. They turn over all the other players' cards. Pick one that they think is wonderful, and then whoever's card they picked won that round.
So this is a category of games that my family plays from time to time, like Apples to Apples, Cards Against Humanity, Balderdash.
Yes, Cards Against Humanity is the same game.
Yes, so
but naughty.
But naughty. My family refers to those games as play the player games because you're there to play the player.
Yes. Yeah, you're not trying to find the dictionary definition of wonderful. You're there to play the player.
Yes, because
pick the one that person will pick.
Because that person thinks that a wonderful poop would be the funniest thing that you could flip down, and so that's the one that's going to win.
Right, exactly. So this is a good example of play the player game. So we played Apples to Apples this week. While we were in England, we bought Apples to Apples British Isles edition.
Oh, dear.
So it's all British Isles. It's like bad at English.
Are there Welsh words that are like 15 consonants in a row?
No, it's not that British Isles-y. And some of it, you could be forgiven to pick up 7 random cards and an adjective and not even notice that it's not the usual American edition. But you could also get 7 cards and not know any of them. So we played it and had a good time, and it also brings back some good memories of our time in England. But it was bad enough at times where my wife and I got to each other and looked at it, and we were like, there's nothing sacred about this set of cards. Let's go through and cull some of the cards.
Ooh, like just thin the deck out.
Yeah, so I've got a stack of...
it's like 50 or 60 cards, man.
Yeah, 50 cards here that we pulled out from the British Isles edition. I did a check. This is only about 5% of the cards. Oh, wow. So we kept 95% of them. But these... So I'll give you some examples here. I've got... I can't even read some of these. Peter Kay, George Best, Sonia O'Sullivan, Sooty and Sweep, Kylie Minogue, Blue Peter, Sir Terry Wogan.
Oh man, we have some British listeners that are just screaming at their podcast player right now.
Yes, these are things like famous people that you would have seen on BBC all the time. I think one of the ones I read were like cartoon characters from a children's show, Sooty and Sweep. But this wasn't a children's show in America, so we wouldn't have seen it, and we didn't watch TV when we were there, so we didn't know it. So if you get these cards in your hand, at least with our family, has a better than average familiarity with the British Isles, but these would still just be a blank in your hand, so we took them out. Oh, why did we take out Iron Brew? I'm putting that back in.
As a side note, I'm insanely jealous of the man who has time in his life to sit down and cull the cards from his Apples to Apples board game that he just doesn't like. You know what? I'm going to take an hour. I'm going to read all 4,000 of these cards, and I'm going to take out the ones that I don't find particularly pleasing.
And it was a good time. So these are a casualty. That was a partial casualty. That was not what I was talking about. We basically improved the game by taking out the 5% of cards that are effectively blanks for our family.
Again, so next time, apologies to any British listeners for Ben saying he improved the game by removing your sacred pop culture references.
By removing Graham Norton, Jonathan Ross, Emmerdale, and terrestrial TV.
We've just lost so many British listeners. Please stay. We promise we'll do better.
But that was not the casualty. So we also played this week a game called Super Fight. Have you ever heard of it?
I've never heard of Super Fight, but that sounds like the kind of chaos game that would jazz you up.
All right. On the back of the box, it says Super Fight is a game where you argue with your friends over ridiculous fights. Game is very simple. You basically have 500 cards split between character cards and powers and weaknesses. So basically, half of the cards are like, your superhero is a pirate, and then you pick 2 things randomly that are potentially powers or weaknesses of said pirate. Like a pirate swinging a shark on a chain on a Segway. So one player randomly gets a superhero with 2 powers and or weaknesses, and then the other one got, in this case, a kindergarten class, breathing fire, wearing a jetpack.
Oh man, like the...
So who would win? The pirate on a Segway swinging a shark on a chain, or a kindergarten class breathing fire wearing a jetpack?
So here's the thing, like that's going to be a tough fight, because I want to say the kindergarten class will eventually swarm over the pirate because there's so many more of them, but kindergartners are just so easily distracted with their ADHD that they might just get picked off one at a time by the shark until there's not enough of them to take them out.
So what you're doing right now is exactly the intent of this game. This is what happens. There's a couple different ways to play it, but the main way is that you just get two people, they get a random superhero, and they fight each other. And then if you have other players, then they could also get one and take on the first superhero that won the first fight. And you go,
Ben, I want to play this game with you on a podcast episode. Like this is clearly the one that
then
lost.
Be glad I didn't burn it yet. Here's the problem. And here's what happened when we played it together. And this goes back to the 10 things every game needs. This game has surprise in the randomness of the cards, but sometimes it's too random. There isn't enough control. It's like you need a weaknesses pile and a strength pile, because sometimes you get a superhero and two weaknesses. Or you'll get a strength and a weakness that could directly contradict each other. And then it's just not fun. I mean, you can try really hard, but it just takes the fun out of it.
I don't know, man. I feel like I want to rules lawyer the crap out of whatever it is you're talking about throwing up.
Okay, so here, I'll draw 3 random cards up.
Okay.
This is an eagle piloting an attack drone with no depth perception.
Oh, that's outstanding. I love that. That's a serious weakness, but he's got an attack plane. Like, I don't know, this weighs out. Like, which attack plane are we talking about? If it's a P-51, then he's kind of screwed. But if we're talking about an F-22 with first look, first kill radar capability, then he's going to be fine, just fine.
All right, let me do another one. So, this is an evil doll and here, this is another problem that we had. This changes very much if I reverse the order of them. An evil doll that throws 200 mile per hour fastballs made of guacamole. Or
an evil doll made of guacamole
that throws 200 mile per hour fastballs.
Sequencing is very important there.
Yeah, and we tried it. We gave it a good go. My family really gets into these kinds of things, but at the end we all looked around at each other like, nah, this game's got to go.
It's less of a game and more of like, hey, is everybody else as extremely bored as I am and want to have a random argument about made-up things?
Yeah, exactly. The game itself was an interesting activity to do, but the cards weren't necessarily the best way to do it.
I see. I am always down for a random superhero discussion, so I'm probably the wrong target audience to be complaining about this game too.
Okay. I'll hang on to that, and maybe you and I will do a super fight at some point in the future.
Excellent. Look forward to that.
Okay, Josh, so you said from last time on the podcast we needed to kind of lighten it up a bit from our political and philosophical arguments on governments and businesses. So what do you got for us?
All right, so I texted you. Like, you said specifically you wanted to do a movie review.
Yeah.
And so I texted you. This is a standard thing that I do. All right, listeners, this is important. This is a life hack. I've discovered this, and it has served me well my entire life. Whenever somebody tells you, or you propose a thing, hey, let's go get lunch. Where do you want to go? And they say, I don't care. What will happen is either you two will descend into this argument about like, oh, how about this place? No, I don't want to go there. What about this place? I don't want to go there. What about this place? Like, I don't care. Like, that's a problem.
I'm fascinated that you're about to say that you use psychology on me. Go.
I have solved this problem, Ben. When you propose something and the other person says, you pick, I don't care, you come back at them with a list of options. And you get to define the list, and this is your contribution to the conversation. It's like, okay, well, here are these 3 things you pick.
I got to find the list you sent me because I remember this. Keep going.
So the list I sent you was like a couple of like legitimate, serious suggestions for a movie review, and then a couple of really stupid ones.
But did you deliberately force me to pick the one I picked?
No, I didn't force you to pick the one that you picked.
No, I'm wondering if you like made the list in order so that
I had an inkling that you would pick the one that I picked, that we ended up picking and watching. But by no means did I intend for you to pick that one.
Okay. I can't find the list. I can't remember what the other things were. Anyway, go ahead and tell them what we picked.
So, what we ended up deciding is that we were going to watch a very light-hearted movie and then do a quick review of it. And the movie that we picked was You've Got Mail.
Yeah, from 1998, starring Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan.
The only reason this was even like anywhere in my brain space is that for the last for the COVID lockdown, my wife and I occasionally will sit down on a Saturday night and watch an old '90s romantic comedy together.
Hey, watch it with your olds there.
Well, and the intent being that she's seen the movie enough that my heckling and my nitpicking during the movie isn't going to bother her too much.
Okay.
And so we kind of do the Muppet critics thing. We're kind of joking and making fun of the movie the whole time.
Statler and Waldorf. This movie came out when I was 21.
Oof. Ooh, Ben. But anyway, we decided to watch for today's episode. We decided to watch You've Got Mail, and we both kind of agreed without having to discuss it that like this movie is so far outside the statute of limitations that listeners, if you've seen it, that's wonderful. You'll get more out of this conversation. If you haven't seen it, it's a 90s rom-com. You can kind of like fill in the blanks of the entire plot line like it's a Mad Lib.
Yeah. I'm already smiling like an idiot just because I love this movie so much.
All right, so the way that we do movie reviews is different every time, but this is the way that it's supposed to go. Like one of us is supposed to give like a very general overarching plot review overview, just say what happened in the movie. Then we do like a meta breakdown, and then we dive into the things that we want to talk about.
Yeah.
So do we want to actually try to stick to that this time, or are we just going to just fire off however we do like we do?
I don't know. One of those two things. So this movie came out 23 years ago, and I think it played an important role in society at the time and since. And I thought it was interesting that you picked it because now we can look back and see like how did it matter then and does it now? What about technology that it was kind of using has transformed in our lives and these kinds of things? Oh man. So and what happened to Meg Ryan? Like, I looked her up. She hasn't been in anything in like a decade.
I can tell you why right now. Oh, before we get into this, everybody, we're gonna spoil the movie. Like flat out. Like
Tom Hanks is still going strong.
Meg Ryan is not in a lot of movies anymore because Meg Ryan is not a good actress. Like,
no, Josh.
Watch this movie again.
Bite your tongue.
No, Meg Ryan has one emotional state throughout this entire movie, and that is. I am attractive and somewhat chipper about the current situation. Like, she is actively getting put down by Tom Hanks, and she's just got a goofy smile on her face the whole time.
I'll let your point stand for now. I will review it later on.
This is the problem. You're trying to do the meta breakdown, and we're already dogging on Meg Ryan. Like, this is our reviews have no structure.
What would you say is the magic system of You've Got Mail?
Are we doing that? We're not doing the magic system. Like, the magic system of You've Got Mail is mental illness. Like, for every character that we meet.
Okay. Well, then let me give more meta background here. Because Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan, this was their third team up in a romantic movie as opposing leads.
So here's the thing. I didn't know that until yesterday. Like, we watched that movie and my wife was talking to me about it. And she's like, oh yeah, that like they were in all kinds of movies together. I'm like, what are you talking about? Apparently Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan were the 90s romantic comedy power couple. I had no idea.
Yep. So the first one was Joe versus the Volcano, which came out in 1990. And then in 1993, they made Sleepless in Seattle. And then 5 years later, they capped off their trilogy with You've Got Mail.
It just screams that Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan just want to find each other.
Yeah, and they've got such interesting to watch chemistry that I think it plays out well on screen, and as it did in this one.
Okay.
So the story of You've Got Mail is kind of timeless. So timeless, in fact, that while it feels like it depends upon the coincidences introduced by the burgeoning ubiquity of the internet in the late 90s, it was based on a Hungarian play called Parfumerie from 1937, which got made into a 1940 movie starring Jimmy Stewart and Margaret Sullivan.
Oh, Ben, that's definitely...
And not loosely based, very closely based.
That is definitely not what it's based off of. Okay. So you're right. This is a classic tale. This is the classic boy meets girl. Boy and girl don't like each other. boy like manipulates and lies to girl the entire time to make girl like boy. Boy and girl get together. Like, it's a classic love story that happens all the time.
Oh, that was so cynical. This was if your public facades can't get along, but if only you could really get to know each other, you're actually compatible. That's the non-cynical version of it.
This story was Pride and Prejudice, except the guy didn't learn any lessons or turn into a good person. He's still prideful and prejudiced at the end of it, but they still got together. That's what the story.
All right, Josh, go ahead and give your plot synopsis.
All right, so the plot synopsis is we open into a, early 90s, mid 90s New York. I don't even know.
Late 90s New York.
Late 90s New York.
It was supposed to be very contemporary to the time it came out, not set in the past.
So we have our two main characters, and it's Meg Ryan and Tom Hanks. They live separately. They don't know each other. They're just people in the world, and they are emailing. Unbeknownst to them, they're emailing each other. They don't share their private information, so they're like pen pals anonymously. It turns out Meg Ryan runs a tiny little bookstore that
we'll call her Kathleen.
I'm gonna go back and forth between these the whole time. Kathleen runs a children's bookstore, like a boutique children's bookstore
called Around the Corner. The shop around the corner.
Her mother owned it. It's been there since like the mid 50s, and it's like an institution in her little neighborhood. And Tom Hanks plays the character Joe Fox, who is like a high-level executive of what is essentially Barnes & Noble.
Yeah.
So like already
Borders or something like that.
We can see the collision course already.
Giant chain corporate bookstore.
Call it Fox and Sons Books or whatever. It doesn't matter. It's a Barnes & Noble. They built a Barnes & Noble like down the street from where her bookstore was going to be. And that sets up the conflict. So but then here's the thing. Is while these two characters do meet each other out in the world and they like don't like each other, obviously they're at odds professionally, but then via the email they're clearly falling in love with each other until Act 2, where they decide we should meet up somewhere, and they go to someplace to meet, and then Joe Fox is the one that realizes that she is the one that he's been emailing. But she doesn't know that Joe Fox is, like, he sees her through the window, recognizes the little sign that they agreed upon, and then he goes in and engages her anyway. And then the entire rest of the movie is Joe trying to reconcile this fact that this person who he's been at odds with is somebody that he's romantically interested in, and trying to fix that relationship, and then like eventually come out and tell her that he is the same person that she's been emailing, and then they end up together at the end. Spoilers, hooray! And it's this great moment. And like that's the plot synopsis. There's a lot I'm skimming over. And this movie just infuriates me, Ben. Like it drives me nuts from start to finish.
Wow. Yeah, I couldn't adore it more. So we're definitely going to have different perspectives on this, but I want to go on a tangent for a second. You just made me realize something. There's another alternate universe movie where at the beginning of the second act, where they've decided to meet up in real life from their internet romance, and he gets the realization that she's the same person as Shop Girl on the over 30s chat room on AOL. And then he decides what he's going to do with that information from now on. And that's one movie. What if in that moment their agreement had been that he would be waiting at the cafe and she would come and she had the realization first? What happens in that movie?
Yeah, I would love to see a modern day remake of that movie. I want a shot for shot remake of You've Got Mail with that scene swapped. That's what I want.
Yeah, because that would be interesting.
I'm on board, but I don't know how Kathleen would have handled that. In that movie, the way that Meg Ryan acted, I feel like she would come clean to him right then and there.
Yeah, and just be like, "Oh my gosh, it's us. You're NY152, and I'm Shop Girl, and here we are."
And then they have a conversation like adults, and then the movie is over after 20 minutes.
Yeah.
No, but instead, what do we get? What do we get, Ben? We get
a beautiful on-location movie shot in New York City that made $250 million at the box office.
I wrote 3 pages of notes about this movie. I'm so vested in this.
All right. Well, I am here to be your counterpoint to all this cynicism and criticism.
Okay.
So where do you want to begin?
At the beginning. The first scene. The very first thing that happens. Meg Ryan wakes up in her apartment with her boyfriend, Frank, who is...
Yeah, played by Greg Kinnear, who is a revelation in this movie. He's the straight man.
All right, so spoilers for all romantic comedies from all of history, ladies and gentlemen. If you see Greg Kinnear on camera, somebody is going to break up with him before the end of that movie.
He's charming, but he's also very self-absorbed. He is the stereotype of a self-absorbed writer who writes for some indie paper and thinks very highly of his writing.
He and the bookstore owner falling in love with the
collects newspapers, reads hard copy papers, and is very suspicious of the internet,
of this technology thing, and keeps buying old typewriters because he loves them so much. Anyway, but the opening scene is he's getting ready for work. And, like, he leaves, and she, like, confirms and checks that he leaves, waiting for him to close the door.
Yeah, it looks like she's waiting for her boyfriend to be gone so she can call her lover into the apartment.
Yeah, it was very, like, she is sneaking around before she launches the computer to email this guy. Which, right there, like, red flags everywhere. You are already, like committing adultery with your boyfriend because you feel like you have to hide this pen pal from him.
So you want to know something interesting I found out? In the 1937 Hungarian play that became the 1940 movie, which became a 1963 musical, which had a 1993 revival on Broadway, in none of those versions of this story do either of the two leads have other romantic interests.
Wow. I really think that they had the romantic interest just to kick the can down the road, just to make sure that this happened in the second act instead of the first act. We had to get.
I don't know. I liked the addition of the additional characters. Greg Kinnear's character was interesting. He was an interesting addition to the movie.
Yes, but like all that they served plot wise was to pad the runtime. But here's the thing: the next scene is Tom Hanks doing exactly the same thing, except he's already ready, and his girlfriend, his live-in girlfriend, is getting ready, and she's the one that's running behind. And he does the same thing. He waits for her to leave. He confirms that she has left multiple ways, and then he logs onto his computer to read the email from Meg Ryan. He's doing the same thing. Like they're both already emotionally invested in somebody else.
So okay. Well, I don't know about that. They never established that. They're just with someone else.
They are with other people. Like they're in committed relationships, and they both feel that they have to hide the existence of their internet opposite sex pen pal from their significant others. Just the fact that they're having to hide it, they know what they're doing is wrong.
This is not a new thing. There was that song back in the 70s, Pina Coladas, I think it was called.
Oh, yes. And do what happens at the end of the Pina Colada song, Ben?
Yeah, they thought they were going to go meet up with someone to cheat on him, and it turned out to be the one they were with in the first place.
But do you know what happens after that? Like, it's this wonderful song, and this great reconciliation until 5 seconds later when they're both done laughing, they go, wait a minute, we both put personals
cheated on each other
in the paper looking for somebody else to be with? Yeah, like this is a train wreck. We need to get out of this.
That's not in the song.
No, that's what happens immediately after the song. And that's what happens immediately after this movie, but we will get there.
Okay, so his character is looking at the paper and he's like, did you know in the state of Virginia they uninstalled the games from all the computers because none of the employees were getting any work done? And then he says, and I want to read the quote that Greg Kinnear's character gives because it's kind of timeless. We are witnessing the end of Western civilization as we know it. that was his take on the internet and where it was going.
Honestly, we still get that kind of alarmist nonsense every time some new thing comes out. I think somebody actually said those words out loud when Facebook turned into Meta this week.
Yes,
we are witnessing the end of Western civilization as we know it.
And they said it before that, and they'll say it after us.
Oh, yeah.
And then he's like, and look at my swell typewriter.
Which he had confirmed at least 3 physical versions of it. Like he had.
That was kind of a joke on Tom Hanks. Did you know Tom Hanks has a collection of over 80 antique typewriters?
I did not know that, but you're like Tom Hanks. Like he's allowed to collect whatever he wants. Like just
okay. So the first scene we have our 2 leads, and I think they establish a link between them, and that they both feel unfulfilled in the relationships that they have that are non-committal relationships. They establish that I think pretty well.
Yeah, they're not engaged. They're not married. They're just dating,
right?
Living together.
Yeah,
I get that.
So non-committal relationships, unfulfilled, and then they find a lot of fulfillment. And I loved the writing of these correspondence scenes.
Yeah, it's just I love fall in New York. It smells like school supplies. I would send you a bouquet of sharpened pencils. Like that is very eloquent writing, and that is a very interesting idea, especially. And
Yeah.
That is interesting, and it's clear that that's not something that he could tell to the person that he was with, which is why he felt fulfillment from these emails, because he was writing these weird thoughts that he had to a person that appreciated and reciprocated.
Yes, well said. I wasn't expecting you to be that articulate about the virtues of this movie. Okay, so even though it's in the title, anyone that's not from the 90s knows that phrase, "You've got mail." It's in the voice of that guy, I don't even know that guy's name, who recorded those words for AOL when AOL was one of the handful of dial-up internet services you would use to connect. And they kind of provided you this catered portion of the internet. The version that they were using on their computers was version 4.0, which wasn't out yet at the time this movie was filmed. So it was like...
Oh, so it's product placement for AOL.
Yeah, absolutely it was. Now, interestingly, if you didn't notice, and you probably did notice, she was on an Apple and he was on a Windows computer.
Now, I could swear one of those scenes she was on an IBM ThinkPad. Or was that him? Am I getting that wrong?
Nope, it was him.
Dang.
It was him.
Okay.
So here's the thing. At the time, Windows was like this giant behemoth corporation, and Apple was the plucky little guy, which you complain about on this podcast being the giant behemoth corporation. But and I intended that for all of the irony in it. And that is reminiscent of their characters. He is the giant behemoth corporation, and she is the plucky little guy. So their computers kind of represent their roles, at least in a professional sense.
That is a wonderful little 3-page essay you could write for a high school paper.
But this was not a tech movie. It was based on an old play and old ideas. Just the idea of being...
I'm not buying into your old Hungarian play. I am buying in 100% to my Pride and Prejudice analogy. Because not only does it fit, but they also called it out in the movie. And movies love to call out their source material. Boy, howdy.
Okay, but they did call out the play as well. The movie by Jimmy Stewart and Margaret Sullivan was called The Shop Around the Corner.
Oh, well, I have no defense. Like, I concede the point. Okay, so...
okay, but in that one, they hate each other in real life and correspond lovingly via letter. And it's a little bit more contrived. The internet brings the coincidence of two random strangers meeting up together to be a lot more probable.
Pretty standard. Like now, the fact that it's two random people in New York that were this closely linked, that's pretty coincidental. But yeah, it could happen. We could see that happening. Yeah. All right, so this
very, very plausible.
Ben, I'll tell you right now, I'm on board. The whole first act of this movie, I'm on board. It's the plug. Okay. I can see the professional conflict that arises. They meet. Tom Hanks gets dragged to a party, and then Meg Ryan gets taken to the same party because it's Tom Hanks' girlfriend is an editor, and she's taking him to this party, and then Meg Ryan's boyfriend is a writer, and he is a writer. So it makes sense that these two people would go to this kind of thing. Oh, but we're missing the part where before that, the first time that they meet is Tom Hanks has taken his weird family, his super weird family, because of his ultra dysfunctional father's past relationships. So he has a 12-year-old girl with him that is his aunt, because that is his
grandfather's child with some younger woman.
And then his 6-year-old brother that is his dad's latest child. Yeah, so he's got these two kids for the day, and they're doing these fun things in the park, and it's every opportunity for Tom Hanks to be Tom Hanks in that lovable montagey way where he's like, "Oh, this is the best version of a person could ever be." And they go into this little bookstore because there's a little sign outside. It's like, "Oh, the storytelling time is here."
Yeah, he's like, "Do you want to go to the amusement park?" They're like, "No, we want to go in this old-timey bookstore."
For the story lady. Yeah, that was a little contrived, but that's fine. And then we have Tom Hanks meeting that he already knows that he's going to take this business under
bookstore down.
Yeah, he knows. Yep. They've talked.
But he's not there as the big business guy. He's there as the nephew.
Yes, the nephew brother. And he's in there and he's selling them books, and he's it opens with him the kids are doing the kid thing, and she's reading a storybook to all the little kids and doing all the boutique things, and he's over there.
She was reading Roald Dahl, and it was poetic and wonderful.
She's doing all the things that you would expect from a boutique children's bookstore, and he is looking at a used book, flipping through the pages, and why is this worth so much money? And having the guy explain to him why it's a collector's item, why it's so special. And
yeah, they're very well establishing. He's like, why is this so expensive?
Yes, and like he bought 3 books and it was $73, and he almost bucked the bill.
Yeah, even though he's a millionaire.
And he finds out that the woman that he's talking to, that he's like hitting off with, flirting with openly, like unabashedly, is the owner of the bookstore. And he because he knew her name, and then he actively stops.
And then he deliberately decides not to tell her that he's the guy building the chain bookstore next door.
Yes, he stops the kids from revealing his identity. And like right there, that's the first time that he lied to Meg Ryan. And this is a running theme through this whole movie. Anyway, later, jump cut to the party that they both get dragged to. And then they see each other again. And like she is talking to him like, oh, it was so good to see you. How is your weird mixed family? And it's this really weird interaction. He's trying to get out of it. And when he finally does, she has this look on her face like, huh, that was odd. And then somebody comes up to her and is like, I can't believe you were talking to Joe Fox.
Okay, I want to go on. This is going to sound like a tangent, but I think I'm talking about exactly what you're talking about.
Okay.
Have you ever been at a party where you meet someone else and find out that they're also in the military and you realize that they're enlisted and you try to hide from them that you're an officer?
This would require me going to parties, so this has not happened to me.
But stick with me here, Josh.
I get what you're saying. I do see what you're doing.
There's like a professional power distance discrepancy, and you want to preserve the secrecy so that doesn't impose itself on the relationship.
Yes. Okay, I see what you're saying. So you're thinking that Joe was trying to get out of the conversation any way that he could, even if it became somewhat rude, just because he didn't want the power dynamic to alter the interaction that they had previously.
Exactly.
Okay. Well,
I do this. I can relate to him not wanting her to know his last name. Like, we were here. I wasn't here under pretenses. I wasn't spying on you. We were having a pleasant conversation on a normal day. Does it have to be about me being a millionaire and you being a little business owner?
I would 100% be on board with that if Tom Hanks was super charming after she found out who he was. Like, listen, I'm really sorry. I didn't want our professional relationship to cause any issues, and it's just business. But no, Ben, what does he do instead?
Nah, he doubles down. He's a joke about it.
He goes ultra jackass like the whole time. Like, just everything that he can do to set himself up as the total and complete D-bag that he's portraying.
And Tom Hanks, the actor, is really good at that, and that was what was demanded of him by the story at that time.
I understand that he has to be that way in order to reinforce the professional strife that's going to cause the tension or the juxtaposition of the personal. Because later, after he's a total jerk at the party, he basically completely pours his heart out and apologizes via email to his anonymous email person.
Yeah.
And so we get to see...
Which shows that he, the professional jerk, is capable of remorse and reflection and kindness.
Right, but it also, as us, the audience, is building up that juxtaposition of the like, oh, but they're so perfect, but they hate each other. How will this conflict ever be resolved?
Now, you pointed out how they have these scenes, and they're interspersed throughout the movie, where they have these 3 generations of men. The founder of the chain, the father who's the corporate giant, the son who's kind of the action officer of the local store, but heir to the throne. And it made me think of another movie you made me watch. Can you remember which?
Oh, geez, no. I've made you watch a bunch of movies.
Arthur Christmas.
Yes! Arthur Christmas is a fantastic movie.
It's the same thing. It's this 3 generations of men and kind of and I think this was a minor theme in the movie, that there's this passed down virtues and problems. And you could see there was a reckoning that happens later on in the movie where he has to kind of come to terms with the bad things that he's inherited from his grandfather and father.
Ben, that is my thesis statement, but we're not there in our plot as we're moving through the plot.
Yes.
Okay.
So we're done with the first act. You ready to go on to the second act?
I'm ready to go on to the second act. It's like, basically that's the whole thing, is this tension is building, that it's clear that the bookstore, the big box bookstore, is going to bulldoze this little store and not give 2 craps about it at any point.
Okay, I want to take issue with the way you're portraying this, because the movie also did it that way. the giant corporation that's building the bookstore on the corner didn't pick that location to try to kill surrounding bookstores. They picked that location because it's a good location and because they can afford it.
Yes, but then the three generations of men in the office actively talked about and identified the competition in their immediate area and how they were going to destroy them. They didn't talk about like, oh yeah, there are some other bookstores. We expect them to go away after a certain time. They named the name of the store, who owned it, and how long they thought it was going to be before they went under.
Yeah, and there was even like I think where he's like, hey, another one's biting the dust, and he points his like finger guns, and he's like, pew, pew, pew.
I actually wrote this down on my paper, but I didn't bring my paper. Well, because the one guy goes like, oh yeah, the middle generation, the head of the company at the time goes, oh, that'll show those leftist, like total, like radical, nonsensical, like just rattling off like adjectives. And then Tom Hanks interrupts him and goes, readers, Dad. We call them readers. And then the dad goes, no, don't do that. Don't humanize them. Don't humanize these animals that we're having to deal with. Like that right there. That's the outlook that they have.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So this, does that reinforce the idea that corporations are these mindless things that make people do things they wouldn't otherwise do? Because they weren't really doing anything in the business world. They weren't going to the shop around the corner, finding what books they sell, putting all of them in the window of their store and saying, we're half price from the shop around the corner.
No, they identified that they were these other little smaller bookstores in their sphere of influence were competition. But they immediately wrote them off as they're going to be collateral damage to us building this much better business model in their area.
Now, I don't know if you heard my voice coming out of Meg Ryan's mouth, but there's a scene at the beginning while all her friends see the writing on the wall. They know the ship is going down, and she's like, it's okay. There can be a big giant bookstore around the corner, and we can still do our thing, which is different. We can carve out our niche in the market and be successful.
She says the words, this has nothing to do with us, as they're looking at the store being constructed like a mile from their location. And here's, do what I wrote down.
Not a mile. It's on the same block.
Oh, yeah, it's very close. This is what I wrote down on my notes, Ben. This is the first stage of the 5 stages of grief for Meg Ryan. This was denial. Like she knows. She sees the writing on the wall. Your life, your professional career is over. And that's the start of her denial.
But I could really identify with her character's optimistic attitude.
If Meg Ryan was a Debbie Downer, we wouldn't love her in all of these movies. Of course, her character has to be plucky, and she's
You're right. This is Meg Ryan at her plucky, cute, adorable peak.
All right, so this is taking a step back and doing a larger view of the movie. This is one of the points that drove me nuts, is because they made such a strong point throughout the entire movie of how Meg Ryan loves this store and her mother worked there and she has all these fantastic memories from her entire childhood of this location. And the whole movie, like doing that, it sets it up like, okay, there's going to be some kind of reconciliation and she's going to save the store and it's going to continue. No, Ben, the store still gets shut down. She still loses her livelihood. She still becomes unemployed. All of her employees are fired. Like, the bad thing that we are hoping is going to get resolved happens. Like, it happens exactly as it was told it was going to happen at the beginning.
Okay, I see the problem. You think that was a failure. I contend that she did not lose her livelihood. The point was not keeping the store. And that it was a success.
Oh, boy. Defend your position here, buddy.
All right. So I'll defend my position. Let's imagine, okay, you and I on this podcast have talked about romantic relationships that we had in the past, and you've spoken kindly of your first high school girlfriend. Just because you didn't end up married to her and have the rest of your life together, does that make that relationship less valuable? Did it have to continue in perpetuity to be valuable?
No, it did not.
I think that's true of something like this bookstore. And I think that's what she saw it for, that it didn't have to exist forever to have been valid at any point over its existence, that she could still retain the memories and the good times and the beautiful memories and the things that the joy of reading that they gave to their readers. And that was all still valid. It still continues to exist.
From a strictly professional sense, I completely agree with you. That if she is of a strong enough mental fortitude and confident enough in herself that she could accept the closing of that store as an inevitable thing that happened due to circumstances, and then move on with her life, having been enriched by the experience. However,
I thought that's what they showed.
That is what they showed. But my problem is that taken in context with the budding personal relationship with the guy who freaking did it. Now, but that's the third.
Oh,
that's
okay.
the third act.
Let's not get ahead of ourselves.
That's my fireworks finale. Let's move on from that.
I think that's where her character ends up, because she's still able to afford her apartment in New York, and she's transitioning to a new opportunity in her life. She's not bitter about it. She has that scene where she's looking at the empty store with all of the books off the shelves and imagines her dancing with her mother there when it was new, and it was just a fond memory of the past. And the fact that things end in our lives doesn't mean that they were never important to us.
I agree. But as a side note, there's one point where Tom Hanks goes, "What do you clear out of that bookstore a year? $350,000 in sales?" And she's like, "How did you know that?" And he goes, "I'm in the book business." Now, as an accountant, I immediately sat back and was like, I don't think $350,000 in sales even covers her overhead in that location in New York.
No, you're right. It was a bad number. It was picked by a writer that didn't know, because that wouldn't pay her rent, let alone her living for herself and her employees.
You're talking about 4 full-time employees, rent for the location, because she loses the whole store, which means she didn't own it in the first place.
Right.
Like
they just picked a deliberately small number so that it wouldn't sound big. It's probably much bigger than that for a.
If you have a fixed retail location in New York like that, she's got to be clearing at least $1 million just to make rent, I feel like.
Right. Okay, so they meet. They agree to meet, and he finds out that the woman that he has this professional tension with is actually his secret lover online, and that he decides to keep it a secret. Start there.
There, yes. So they agree to meet at a cafe, and he's walking to the cafe, explaining the circumstances to his friend, to Dave Chappelle, who is literally the token black guy in this movie. Like,
okay, I found out that Dave Chappelle tried out for the role of Bubba in Forrest Gump, turned it down because he thought the movie wasn't going to be successful, regretted it forever, and Tom Hanks promised him he would give him another chance to be Bubba, and this was it.
Oh, that's not the Bubba. Like, that's Dave Chappelle, I'm so sorry. like your role in You've Got Mail was not Bubba from Bubba Gump Shrimp. That just did not pan out, and I'm so sorry.
Yep.
No, you turned out to be the token black guy and some comedic relief in this like terrible love story. Okay, anyway, he's walking down the street with his friend Dave Chappelle, and he makes Dave Chappelle go to see if she's pretty, because this is something guys would totally do. She's in there already sitting down with the book and the flower, totally committed. She doesn't care what freak show walks through that door.
I like that you're focusing on this scene, because they dwell on it. It's not just over and saying, "Oh, don't worry, man, she's hot," because Chappelle has also met Meg Ryan's character, and he instantly makes the connection.
Yes, he realizes that, oh crap, this guy that my buddy is clearly falling in love with, like kind of cheating on his girlfriend with, is the person that he hates professionally.
Yeah. Now, they have this moment before it's revealed and figured out, where they have this hypothetical discussion about what if she's ugly.
I completely glossed over that conversation.
Okay. Well, I want to take an aside. This screenplay was written and directed by a woman.
Oh, okay.
And this scene kind of felt like it was, that this was evidence of it. The director's name is Nora Ephron. She also wrote Sleepless in Seattle, which also starred Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan. She's Ivy League educated woman, and you could tell that she wanted to imbue a bit of sensitivity in her male lead here. Like he says to Dave Chappelle, Tom Hanks' character says, "You know what? Even if she's ugly, I'm still going for it, because our connection is so deep and profound that I want this woman to be in my life."
I feel like an emotionally mature man would acknowledge that. Somebody that has been out in the dating world long enough would recognize that it's not about looks. It's about who you can be with long term. Yeah. But that doesn't change the fact they still had to have a conversation about the looks. Like that's still like on the table. He says it's not that important. Like, but what he's like, let's be clear. He's talking about if she was like a 5 or a 6, that's not that important. If she was like, Absolutely. If she's like a 1 or a 2, it's more important now.
Okay, I found something fascinating when I was researching Nora Ephron, the director and writer of this. She said, and I quote, "In my sex fantasy, nobody ever loves me for my mind."
Listen, all right, this is one of those, you like to talk about the rules, the little lies that we tell each other to make society function. We all like to say, especially in this modern day and age, that looks don't matter. It's what's on the inside and personality. And you know what, Ben? I am 100% on board. That is true. However, there's a little piece of everybody's brain that's still that animalistic part that just wants to be wanted for what they look like.
And that's what she said.
Anyway, here's what we've got. We've got the scenario where Tom Hanks recognizes the problem. He recognizes this juxtaposition of the person that he is falling emotionally in love with is his professional enemy, direct rival, and a person that he is destroying and has no apathy for, and has actively.
I think you're overstating that. It was just an afterthought. It was just a side effect of what they were doing. But okay.
To him,
he doesn't view her as the competition.
I know. To him, she was collateral damage, but he is completely aware that to her, he is the guy that is putting her out of business, which is a very personal thing. Now,
I think the way to unpersonalize this is to ask, is something, if they secured that location, built that store, is there a way they could have conducted business in that store to deliberately try to preserve her business?
Of course there is. Of course there.
No.
They could have reconciled the differences between the two companies. It could have been a merger. They could have brought her in as the whole section, as the child. There's a bunch of things they could have done.
That was a good answer. Okay, go ahead.
Here's the thing, Ben. What is it, like, he sees her and he recognizes this dilemma, and what he goes, and Dave Chappelle goes, "What are you going to do?" And he goes, "Nothing." And he starts walking away. And I'm like, Tom Hanks is going to be the bigger person here. He's going to remove himself from this, recognizing that he doesn't want to cause this person any more emotional harm or damage. But then...
That was also deciding to stand her up.
But Ben, all right, so this, to me, he comes, like, after a couple minutes of Meg Ryan sitting there alone, thinking that she's going to get stood up, Tom Hanks comes in, not as the person that's going to meet her from the internet chat lounge, but as Joe Fox, randomly bumping into her and asking her, "Hey, how's it going? What are you doing? Why are you in this cafe by yourself? You have a flat
kind of twisting the knife."
And so here's the thing, Ben. To me, this is the moment where Tom Hanks's character goes from being a jackass to being a sociopath, because he knows now, like, he is aware that she is in love or falling in love with this fictitious person that he has created that's not really fictitious, but like he's now playing both sides. Whatever he does from this point forward is a deliberate decision to manipulate her emotionally. This guy become like, even for the best of intentions, like, he is, no doubt, there's no argument here, manipulating her.
Okay, I'm on board with what you're saying, but what I want you to remember is that this was written and directed by a woman who liked this idea as a fantasy of what a man should act like.
This is the moment where I'm like, lady, you need to run for the hills. You need a restraining order. You need a taser. You need to pepper spray this guy. This guy is like 3 steps away from cutting off your face and wearing it. Like, he's so, like, it's...
Okay, so we're imagining this as like the Sixth Sense, where we have him now as just this sociopath that's manipulating her for the rest of the movie.
This is my hypothesis.
Full knowledge of the situation.
Because he has full knowledge and is playing both sides, he has the power, and he acknowledges this, that he could either walk away, be the bigger person, and let her find somebody in her life that is worthy of her, or he can do the selfish thing and manipulate her into loving him despite the professional problems that they've had.
Okay, so that night, earlier on, he'd introduced to her the idea of when you're in the moment, you don't necessarily think of the snappy comeback when someone's rude to you, and then later on you think of it. And she's like, "Yeah, that's totally me. That I'm never able to think of it in the moment."
That was part of his apology during the dinner thing, because he says he's always that guy coming up with that, and she remorse about how she is never that person.
Right. So that night she does. And she says some really biting, cutting things to him, not knowing the full thing that he knows. And that kind of contributes to his decision not to peek out from behind the curtain. And then he leaves. She she goes too far. He really is genuinely wounded, and he's like, okay, I'm out of here, and he leaves, like she'd been asking him to do all along, and he goes back and gets on the computer, and then she makes an apology unwittingly, which is the best kind.
Yes, which is reminiscent of the unwitting apology that he made to her based on the zingers that he gave to her at the dinner party.
Right, which wins him over. Like, if she didn't make the apology, would he have just not done anything else and it would have been over?
But it was not an apology, okay? Like, it's only an apology if she knew that she was apologizing to him for what she did to him.
Okay.
She expressed remorse. Exactly. She was expressing remorse, but because he knows that he's again, it goes back to the fact that he's playing insider baseball now. Everything that he finds out about this woman, he is cheating. Like, it's not fair. They're not on equal emotional levels here. So he gets all the subtext. All of the little things that she says that she thinks she's hiding personal information from him is no longer hidden. He is, like, everything she says is completely transparent because he knows the full situation and she doesn't.
Okay, so take to the next step.
So he's conflicted after that, and he's like, their whole scene where he wants to go to the computer, but he's not, and he's like, oh, I really shouldn't, it's bad. And like, the whole fact that there was a scene where he was hesitant to go back to the computer acknowledges the discrepancy.
Right, she's still trying to figure out why she got stood up for their meetup.
Yes. But the fact that he doesn't go right back to the computer acknowledges that there is an ethical dilemma here. He is recognizing that he is morally not in the safest territory, and he goes back and he sits down and starts deceiving her. This is the thing. He doesn't lie to her.
Yeah,
he makes
you're right.
Very clear that he is not lying to her.
Up to that point, he was being genuine, and now it's deception.
Yes, everything that he writes in those emails after that is manipulation, start to finish.
Okay. All right. Now, I'm giving you this point. Why do you think that the movie got away with it?
So from my perspective,
because $250 million says people didn't see it your way.
Because people want. So I think the movie got away with it because Meg Ryan went through the 5 stages of grief for her shop being closed, while completely skipping over the depression phase. Like, she went straight from, at one point she was angry and trying to fight back with the publicity and the paper and the news organization or whatever. And then she went straight to acceptance, where she's just like, well, I guess we're going to close. It's been a good run. Thanks, everybody. I'm going to move on and get these new opportunities and my life's going to be great. And like, nothing, the whole point, like, once we get past the second act, the store closing is no longer a conflict. We don't want that to be a conflict anymore. We want that to just fade into the background so these two can come together. You're right.
It is a different movie where you dwell in the depression phase, and this wasn't the right movie for it.
No.
There was another movie that you just reminded me of. Have you ever seen My Big Fat Greek Wedding?
A long time ago.
Okay, in this, the woman is the Tom Hanks character, and the guy comes and he's the Meg Ryan character, where she brings home this guy and she's introducing him to her big, loud Greek family, and they're horrible to him, like, the whole time, and he never gets angry about it, and the plot requires him not to, because it would be a completely different movie if he got mad about how crappy they were treating him.
This is why, like, it starts to upset me a little bit, is because they made it such a strong point in the first 2 acts that this store was so important to her and such a huge part of her life, and then it closes and she's just fine with it and we don't hear about it anymore. It's like, why were you building this up to be so important if it is required to go away with no consequences in order to resolve the plot the way that you want to?
I don't know, Josh. I value the kind of virtues that were depicted in Meg Ryan's character.
Well, we can do that, but here, all right, so let's get to the climactic finale, where the entire third act is this back and forth between Joe Fox out in the world bumping into Kathleen and now manipulating the conversation so they're talking about the mystery person that she is emailing. And then he gets to play the other side of it. Like, he deliberately drives her to ask if he's married or not. And then he goes back and writes her an email about, like, how dare you ask me I'm married? How could you think such a thing based on everything that we've talked about? And then it cuts back to him like, oh, he totally didn't answer the question. He's totally ducking you and doing these things. Like,
you're right. It's very manipulative.
All right. So this is the thing. And then
I feel like you're making the same point over and over.
All right. So here's my finale. Here's where my fireworks come in. He's currently living on a boat because he decided that he was going to break up with his girlfriend after they were trapped in an elevator. You know what? I want to go into that for a second. There was a scene.
Oh, yes. Okay. I like the trapped in the elevator scene. It's a device for what's really important to you in life.
I honestly wrote down in my notes, I'm like, I think if you're thinking about getting married with somebody, you should be trapped in an elevator with them for an hour.
Yeah, because it really clarified his feelings toward his current living girlfriend.
Well, in like the elevator guy, like the dude who pushes the buttons, like opened up his wallet and was looking at a picture of his girl and was like, you know what, if I get out of here, I'm gonna ask her to marry me. I love her. I don't know why I'm wasting my time. And then Tom Hanks goes, you know what, if I get out of here, I'm going to. And then his girlfriend interrupts him with some inane nonsense.
Yeah, where are my Tic Tacs?
And that was his like wake up moment of like, what am I doing here?
Isn't it though? That was such a profound wake up moment. Like, how self-centered is this person that I said the 4 keywords to say, I'm about to bare my soul and tell you what's important to me in my life, and she wasn't even listening. And they're trapped in an elevator.
Here's my thing is like we saw with the 2 previous generations, the grandfather and the father obviously have had marital issues. Like the father having marital problems is almost a running gag, but a known fact in the lore of this movie. And so like the father's had multiple mistresses, has had multiple children, like all throughout his life. Like it's a problem. He is yes. bad with relationships. And so my feeling is that I think Tom Hanks was holding on to this relationship in order to deliberately get away from the type of problems that he has seen in his father. And I think
Which one? The girl in the
elevator?
elevator?
Girl in the elevator. Because the fact that he was sneaking around with Meg Ryan on the email, like he knew at some level that his relationship wasn't fulfilling. And he was seeking for something else more fulfilling elsewhere. But he was staying with her anyway, I think, because he saw how bad relationships could be in his other generation. And he didn't want to be that guy. Now, jump forward to the dad.
Now, was he a millionaire that had moved in with his girlfriend in New York, or was she living in his apartment and just to make it the transition easier, he moved out?
I don't know if it matters, but I feel like Tom Hanks's character is like, you know what, I've got a boat. I'm going to live on the boat for a couple of days. Get all your crap out of my apartment, and then I'll come back.
Okay,
that's how I took it.
Okay, all right.
So Tom Hanks was living on his boat. And then he's out walking his dog, and then he sees his dad pull up in a limo with all of his luggage, and his dad's moving back into his dad's boat, which is in the slip next to his.
Right, because he's broke up with his living girlfriend.
He broke up with his live-in.
Or his latest wife.
His fiancée or whatever. And that was, and they have this conversation when they're going through and they're trying to like do the scoreboard for Tom Hanks's dad's like previous lovers, and 2 of them were like his nanny.
Yeah.
And like, it was just bad. And that was, you see Tom Hanks like kind of wake up in that moment like, oh crap, I don't want this kind of life.
Yes. Oh, I love that you keyed in on this scene, Josh, because up to that point, his dad was just like the comic relief. Like, he's bad at relationships. But now it's actually something profound. Like, do I want to end up like my dad?
And so what does he do in the next scene? We jump cut to Tom Hanks carrying flowers to Kathleen's apartment, which... how the hell did he find out where she lives? Red flag number 1. Number 2, he buzzes.
I thought they explained that in the story, but okay.
One of her previous...
He asked Birdie from work or whatever.
I'm going to get there. Like, he buzzes the number, and she's like, hello, and she's like sick. And he's like, hey, it's Joe Fox. I brought flowers. Can I come up? And she goes, no, I'm sick. And then she's explaining why he can't come up. And then he tailgates somebody that's going into the building. Yeah,
into the apartment building and then knocks on the door. And then she lets him in and he tells her to go.
No.
She tells him to
go
away.
She does not let him in. She opens the door and he comes in. This is a very clear point that I want to make in this.
Yeah.
This entire scene, we are crossing from sociopath to...
breaking and entering.
Yeah, actual crime being committed.
Yeah. Okay.
And
you can have this. Keep going.
And she has to be sick in this scene because he drops a few hints about that he is the person that she's been seeing in this email, but she doesn't pick up on it because she has to be a little less than fully aware because we want to have this scene. And like at one point he explains like, oh, I brought you flowers, and then later he goes, oh, I brought you flowers because you're sick. He didn't know she was sick, and she's like, oh, it was the guy who used to work for you is now working for me.
And they were daisies, and how would he know she loved daisies?
And she said, like, oh, I love daisies. He goes, I know. And she doesn't pick up on that. And like he does that like 3 or 4 times.
And then he even quotes some of the lines that they've been sharing back and forth in the email, and she still doesn't pick up on it.
He talked to her about freaking Pride and Prejudice again, which is her favorite book that she reads all the time. Like there's multiple things that she does. But this this scene ends, and like in the scene, like she opens the door and like motions for him to leave, and he goes deeper into her house. And then at one point, she's getting into her bed, and then he sits down on the edge of the foot of the bed, and they're having a conversation. Yeah. Then he moves up to halfway up the bed, and she starts saying something, and he puts his fingers over her mouth. He is touching her in her house that he was not invited into, in her bed, yeah. And he goes, "Don't say something you might regret for years from now." And he goes, I'm over here on the couch going, that's a little presumptuous, Tom Hanks, thinking that you're going to be together years from now, and she's going to regret the things saying to the person who broke and entered into her apartment uninvited. But this is.
But he'd said earlier, or maybe later on, like, I want to find the right person that I want to have coffee and dinner and a movie until death do us part.
I mean, he says all the things that you want the person to say in the romantic comedy, and this is the juxtaposition I want you to like take the movie, and I want you to split it into 2 tracks in your mind. Okay.
Yeah, I got it.
There's one track where everything that he says, and Tom Hanks says all the right things, and the relationship is there, and the chemistry is there, and these 2 people are perfect for each other. Now let's look at all of the freaking actions of this guy.
He lies to her, he manipulates her, he breaks into her house, he tracks down where she lives.
Destroys her livelihood, like closes the store that is like the most important thing in her whole life. And like he does everything wrong, like all of the things that are completely unforgivable, that they will be in therapy together for years to come in order to overcome these discrepancies. And what does Meg Ryan say when he finally sees and recognizes who he is? I was hoping it was you. I was hoping it was you, the guy who closed my mother's business, who inserted himself into my life, who recognized, and this is the thing, this
tracked me down, broke into my house.
I woke up in the middle of the night after watching this movie and realized this. This didn't dawn on me when I was watching it. It happened hours later, and it's this epiphany moment. Ben, once she realizes that he's the guy and he's the same guy, at some point, once she gets over this, like, oh, I'm so happy phase, she should have had like this. She's gonna realize
horror movie flashback.
Yes, she's gonna realize
the whole time.
Yes, I wrote that phrase on my notes, like
on Mrs. Doubtfire.
The whole time.
When she realizes
the whole time. Yes. The whole time, you were the same person, which means you were playing insider baseball, Ben, for months. When they in Act 2, when they planned to sit at the cafe together, was in winter. They got together in late spring. For months, this psychopath was manipulating her, and she's going to realize that.
Wow. Okay. Well, that's a completely different version of the movie. I am imagining a Far Side comic I saw back in the 90s. It was one of my favorites. It showed up. It was a one-panel comic, and there was a banner hanging up over a punch bowl, and it said, "The Didn't Like Dances with Wolves Society." And there's like a giant empty room with a bunch of empty chairs and like 2 guys drinking punch.
Ben, I recognize that I'm in the minority here because I didn't like Who Got Mail, but
I'm making that comic with you. The Didn't Like Who You Got Mail Society.
Ben, you look me in the eye and tell me that everything that I said wasn't 100% factually correct.
No, you're completely right.
All right, so I've been on a rant. I am sweating. I am physically sweating. Okay. I am so worked up about. Every time I watch this movie, I get so mad at Meg Ryan. So Ben, please bring us down. Tell me the good version of this story.
I want to go off on a few tangents.
Okay.
So I watched this movie with my 19-year-old son and my 18-year-old daughter, and I was specifically attuned to their experiencing the technological and time period specific things of this from the eyes of somebody who's, that wasn't alive when this happened.
Wi-Fi has always been a thing.
Like, for instance, they weren't familiar with the term stood up, which is said a lot in this movie.
What?
The millennial term for stood up is different. Do you know what it is?
I don't. What is it?
Ghosted.
Okay, now hang on a second. I know ghosted. I've heard that in different contexts, but I want to be clear right now, Ben.
They don't use the term stood
hang
up.
On. You recognize that I'm a millennial, right?
Okay, whatever we're calling the generations. Let's not split hairs here. I was kind of watching them when you heard the modems making the dial-up sound, but I guess they have enough peripheral awareness of that, that it used to be harder to connect to the internet and that kind of thing.
56 KB,
but I was surprised. Baby. Yeah, I was surprised how little this movie relied on the technology.
The technology was a tool to tell the story. It was abstracted away because it was understood that the people would recognize what they were doing.
Now, one of the things that's interesting that one of my kids observed is they said, it's weird how big bookstores are.
Huh.
And I think to them, if you want a book, you go on Amazon.com, the world's biggest bookstore, and it shows up at your front door. My kids don't go to Borders or Barnes and Noble anymore. In fact, Amazon.com now has become the giant monolithic corporation destroying the Barnes and Noble on the corner that's your remnant of the ways of the past.
Man, we're not talking about antitrust stuff. We're getting off of that heavy topic from 57.
Okay, sorry. I just had to take a little thing. Josh, have you ever heard of the Bechdel test?
Yes. I told you about the Bechdel test. Don't throw the Bechdel test back in.
Well, let's talk. Okay, let me ask you. Do you think you've got... Well, okay, hang on. For the audience, the Bechdel test comes from a comic written by a girl named Alison Bechdel back in 1985, where she proposed kind of fictionally and humorously in a comic the idea that she wouldn't watch any movies unless they passed the three things. And they are that the movie or other fictional property has at least two women in it, that they talk to each other, and that they talk about something other than a man. So Josh... Yes. Do you think You Got Mail passes the Bechdel test?
Yes, it does pass the Bechdel test. I can think of a specific scene where there is Meg Ryan and the old lady bookkeeper that they were friends with in the bookstore talking about the finances of the bookstore going under. There's another scene where it's Meg Ryan, one of her employees, and that same old bookkeeper in the lady's apartment. Wait, they were talking about being stood up on that one, weren't they?
Yeah. Anyway, You're right. You keyed in on a scene where this movie passes the Bechdel test. 42% of movies don't pass the Bechdel test on at least one of those three things.
It's clear that we mentioned that the Bechdel test is now used as kind of a benchmark for female agency in a movie. It's like how friendly to women is this movie?
It wasn't designed to be that. It was just a thing in a comic.
No, but that thing in the comic was so accurate and drilled right down to the core of it that it is now used as that. It's the yardstick for which we measured this thing.
Yes, but Baby Got Back by Sir Mix-a-Lot passes the Bechdel test.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. Like, I think Sir Mix-a-Lot is a very gender conscious and forward progressive thinking person.
Okay, so I wrote down a list of curiosities about the internet that were in this, because this was kind of considered to be a technological bellwether. We were living our lives up to this point, and there started to be movies like Sandra Bullock's The Net and You've Got Mail that came out where we kind of began to reckon as a society with how is the internet going to transform our lives? Is it going to be the foundation of our romantic relationships? But you could tell there was a lot of stigma associated with the idea of meeting up in person with someone you met online still, which we've kind of broken through since then. But this was back in the time when, they actually said things. I think Dave Chappelle's character, or the old lady, was like, you didn't agree to meet this person, did you? You'll find out they're a different gender than they told you, or whatever, all of those things. So the internet, wasting time, cheating. I think here's a quote from the movie. Is it infidelity if you're involved with someone on email?
Yes, the answer is yes.
The AOL sound effects, modems, screen names. She was Shop Girl and he was NY152, which was his address. Chat rooms. Do we even have chat rooms anymore?
I think they still exist in some
Discord?
Weird parts of the internet, but I don't know how to get to them anymore.
They used the term cybersex, although they didn't really define it. And this movie was not at all about sex. The idea of escalating from email to instant messaging. At one point, she was on emailing him, and instant message popped up, and she was like, "Oh no, we're escalating the relationship."
We were watching that scene, and my wife goes, "Oh, I guess this was before they had text messaging," and it was there was no way to if you weren't on the phone with them, there was no way to live communicate with somebody outside of that.
Yep. It was always asynchronous. There was the 90s trope that they repeated that whoever it was you're with online that seemed like a reasonable person was actually a serial killer. And your contention is that they were right.
He didn't kill anybody, but he's clearly mentally unstable.
At one point, she wasn't doing her computer and it went to screensaver, and it was the Starfield screensaver that everyone had back in the 90s. I enjoyed that.
That was a cool screensaver, yes.
Birdie was independently wealthy because, and I quote, "I bought Intel at 6."
Yes, the old lady bookkeeper.
Yeah, and then there was that weird who just worked for minimum wage in the bookstore and was actually more wealthy than her employer because she was good at investing.
I live in Arizona. There's a lot of retirees here. I can tell you right now, there are a lot of very old people that have no need for any jobs that do random nonsense because they have to have something to get them out of the house.
They were waiting in line at Starbucks and paid $2.95 for coffee. Like that was a lot.
I actually...
What is it, like $7 now?
Yeah. Oh, I thought it was interesting that Meg Ryan ordered the same thing my wife used to get at Starbucks. Tall, skinny caramel macchiato. And I know that, and my wife doesn't, because I'm the one that's required to get her Starbucks.
There were cash-only lines at the grocery store, even though they had a working credit card machine there.
Oh, thank you for bringing this up. Let's do this as a tangent.
Talk about that scene.
Okay, so this scene, Meg Ryan recognizes Joe Fox. Like, this is before they were, like, doing the email thing. Like, he's still the professional guy that's...
She's trying to hide from him and absentmindedly gets in the cash-only line and ends up at the front, has this awkward social interaction.
Oh, dear, I'm so sorry. I don't have any cash. I only have this one single dollar, and I see you have a credit card machine. Would you please make an exception? And, like, the register lady is, like, being like, no, you should have been in the right line. The people behind her are complaining. And then Joe Fox walks up and goes, and like you think that as the millionaire, he's just going to throw down $100 bill and solve all her problems.
Yeah, I thought so too. No, instead he bullies the minimum wage employee.
He uses his superpower of being a complete jackass, and somehow, like he's like, hey, I see you got the credit card machine. Why don't you do us a favor and just zip it through there? Zip. Come on. What's your name? Like Meg, like, go ahead, Meg, just zippy zip. And he says that a couple of times. And then she, abashedly, like, smiles and, like, oh, okay, just for you. Like, wait a minute. Being a jerk doesn't get people to like you and do the things that you want to do. And then, like... No,
you're right. That was kind of unrealistic.
He leaves, and Meg Ryan's like, oh, thank you so much. I'm so sorry. And then she goes right back to being mean to her again. Like, what? This is not a real-life interaction.
Okay, so... Yeah, and then there was a lot of reminiscence about the past. Like, I think one of Tom Hanks's aunt in the store like sneezed or something like that, and he goes, Meg Ryan offers her a handkerchief, and she's like, "What's this?" And she goes, "Handkerchiefs are tissues you don't throw away."
Like, which is disgusting. I wanted the 12-year-old girl to be like, "That's gross. You're carrying around my boogers for the rest of the day."
But there was this underlying theme of, why do we hang on to the things of the past? What value do they have to us now that we found ways to replace them that might look on the surface to be better?
Handkerchiefs. No, like, don't. Handkerchiefs are not.
Don't get stuck on handkerchiefs. Let's talk about books.
Books.
Because the internet is here competing for books, for attention in our life, and maybe making books irrelevant. And she says at one point, books help you become who you're going to be.
I was behind that. Like, that's, if we extrapolate and take the word books out of that and just insert the word media, like the media that you consume as a child is going to have some level of influence over the development and the person that you become. Now, I'm not going to say to what degree. It could be a tiny degree. It could be a huge degree. That's an argument of semantics. But I'll tell you right now, I remember feeling distinctly underwhelmed by life on my own, like after I got out of college and started my job. Like, I feel like all of the media I consumed up to this point, like, built up this existence as a single person out in the world to be more than it's turning out to be, and I was a little disappointed.
That was profound. I don't have anything to say to that. I want to do a rapid fire list of the little joys, because if there's anything I felt like I had in watching this movie with my family and just enjoying all of the joys of it, it's beautiful to look at. The chemistry between the leads is interesting and real. The nonverbal acting. The director just lets these talented actors sometimes just show, like the scene where Tom Hanks is deciding whether or not to get on the computer and write her because he's having the moral dilemma, where he's all the way at the end of the hallway, we're looking at him from behind the computer and just walking back and forth, and he'll glance at the computer. It's just it's a masterclass.
I will throw down that all of those moments, like about the nonverbal acting that you're talking about, those were 100% Tom Hanks and 0% Meg Ryan.
No, I wrote down one of Meg Ryan's. She'd gotten home. I don't remember. I think it was the day she closed the store or something like that. She gets back to her apartment and she does a dejected flop on the bed. And it was so good that now that's added to our list of nonverbal acting games that we do in my house. 2 from this movie. Dejected flop on the bed is one. The other is the pretending that you're narrating while you're typing. This is a good one. Do this with a loved one. Get a computer, unplug the USB cable, hand them the keyboard, and then read something dramatic in a dramatic voice and have them pretend that they're typing what you're saying. Hilarious.
Okay, that I can see. I did like...
They do that a lot in this movie, and they're never actually typing, but they're acting that they're narrating what they're typing while they're being filmed. And Meg Ryan did great at that.
I'll give you that. There was a couple of scenes where they did a voiceover of what they were actually typing, and then sometimes they were actually saying the words while they were filming them at the same time. And those were acted and edited and just filmed very well, because they felt like something you do when you're typing a very emotional email, like the head motions.
Yes.
Okay, all right. I'll give you that. Yeah, that's good.
Okay, listeners, if you try this game with your loved one, please share it. Go on the subreddit or the Facebook and tell us about your experience. Felicia Day does a great example of this on her vlog. I will put that on. I'll put a link in the show notes. But do this where you give someone a keyboard and read something, have them pretend that they're typing it while you narrate. It's great. It's hilarious. Okay, so the acting, I love. I'm gonna have to bleep this, but I love where she decides she's gonna go to war with him, and she goes out and they picket the community, and they give her a real eloquent speech on the nightly news, and then they cut to him. And he's like, "What can I say? People like cheap books." And then they cut away, and that's all they have for him. And then his father's there. He's like, "What was that all about? Didn't you have anything?" She's like, "I had stuff to say. I was eloquent."
Yeah, that was funny.
Okay. The love of great children's literature, which I think I've tried to share with you. I think I went to your house once and saw the books you're reading to your children. I'm like, oh, this won't do at all. And I went home, and my wife and I found some of our favorite books and sent to you and Nicole, so you could have good children's literature to read to your kids. The soundtrack just drew you into the movie and helped heighten your emotions. The beautiful fall in New York, just like they were raving about, the festival they went to on the street, the montage where they were in their homes and you were seeing their holiday traditions of laughing and singing, the talent show, the holiday songs. Oh man, it just the little joys of this movie are endless. If you enjoy that kind of thing, check it out.
This is a great example of when you get it right, it fades into the background, because you have to really be paying attention to like the sound mixing, or to the Foley work, or to the cinematography, or where they set up the shots, or what they're actually shooting. Like the cinematography in this movie, I will say, is very, very good. Every shot looks very, very well done. And like you said, it makes New York look the best version that New York could possibly be. And when it's done well, you don't think about it. When it's done badly, it's glaring and in your face. And this is one of those movies that maybe that's why I'm so wrapped around the axle about the story, is because everything else was done so well that the story to me is front and center.
Okay. Well, let's talk about this story for a minute, because I like that this movie broke some of the traditions of what you'd come to expect from rom-coms, as they're called, romantic comedies. You know, there was no scene where she just was infuriated with him and ran off, and then he had to go after her. And those are tiresome.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's real life, though. That's boys chasing girls. That's like right there. That's all of human history.
And that's, I think, a difference between a rom-com written by a woman as opposed to one written by a man. There was the part, and he quotes The Godfather a lot. I don't need to talk about that, but that was one of the things in the movie. But he says to her, "It wasn't personal," which I think was very deliberately the same kind of line that they say in The Godfather about a hit where you kill someone.
Right.
And he was saying that about her business going under. And she's like, "It was personal to me." And what's so wrong with being personal anyway?
Yeah, she had a whole nice little speech, an eloquent speech about these things should be personal.
Yeah, and I liked it. She says, "All that means is it wasn't personal to you, but it was personal to me."
Which, again, the reason why they shouldn't be together at the end of the movie. I was going to drive that home. She even said that they shouldn't be together at the end of the movie, but they ended up... Ben, this movie drives me nuts. Like, just so bad.
I like your perspective on it. It should join the pantheon of great internet fan theories.
All right, don't go crazy. I'm bad mouthing a character that Tom Hanks played. I'm clearly on the losing side. Like, I'm the guy that's by himself with the punch bowl and that didn't like You've Got Mail.
All right, so it's been 23 years since this movie were made. If it were made today, what should the title be? I got a few. Tell me if you think of it.
I do. I have one right off the bat.
Okay, go
New
ahead.
phone, who dis?
Oh, that's way better than mine. She swiped right.
Oh, that's a good one.
Jeff Bezos, new flame.
Oh, no.
Brinkley.
Just the dog's name.
Just Brinkley. Confessions of a 9-year-old auntie.
That's horrifying, but yes.
Or to fully play up on your conspiracy theory, we could just call it Gaslight.
That is exactly what he did. He gaslighted her the whole movie. Oh, thank you for giving me one word to describe exactly what happened in all of this craziness.
Yeah. Okay, so I feel like we've come to the end. I don't argue with your main thesis here, but I was overcome by the wonderful acting, the real chemistry, the beauties, and the good writing, and overall, I'm just charmed so much I can't even notice what you're talking about.
The movie was very good, and I liked every aspect of the movie. Of the movie, it's just I don't. Maybe this is just me as the cynical person that it just believes in nothing but entropy and death. But I just feel like the plots are so contrived sometimes. Another movie we watched was Only You with Marissa Tomei and Robert Downey Jr. And I felt the same thing, like, how could these people possibly end up together at the end of this movie? And the reason is because we want them to. Because we, as the viewers...
Wait. Marissa Tomei and Robert Downey Jr. as in Aunt May and Tony Stark from the Marvel Cinematic Universe?
Okay, so I had that... When we saw that, and there was chemistry on that movie between Aunt May and Robert Downey Jr., my wife goes, oh, that's because they were in this movie together. And I was like, what are you talking about? And then we watched it together. There is a romantic comedy about those two. Yes.
You're blowing my mind. That's
it's called
awesome.
Only You. Okay, we're going to have to put that on the list to watch in the future, I guess. But the idea is that, like, all of these romantic comedies are totally contrived and irrational plots. But the reason for that is, and that drives me nuts because they're irrational, but the reason that they're irrational is because we want it to happen anyway. These are the stories we tell ourselves, not because they're true, not because they can happen, but because that's what we want. It's cathartic, and we just want these two people that we care about to be happy.
Yeah. Well, I feel like they achieved a happy ending, but I can see why you feel like it was false and cheap.
Yeah, and I'm sorry if I ruined You've Got Mail for everybody or anybody that's listening.
You, like I said, you've added to the internet pantheon of fan theories. Audience, if you agree with what Josh said, I'd love to hear your opinions. Go on the subreddit or the Facebook and join in on the discussion. If you're like me and you just love the virtues and joys of this movie, I want to hear that too. If you heard the things that we talked about in this episode and you want to see more, there'll be links in the show notes. You can go to our website, badandmagic.live. I'll put a photo album up on Facebook as I always do, or you can go on the subreddit and join in the discussion.
If you like what we do, consider sharing us with a friend. If you like us, maybe your friends will like us too. If you really want to help us out, consider taking your phone out of your pocket and giving us a good rating on the podcast player of your choice. It is unbelievable the visibility we get on that stuff. If you want me and Ben to start up 23-year-old internet debates for no reason, and you want us to keep doing that forever, consider becoming a patron on our Patreon page.
And as always, try to be a little less bad at magic.